Achtung, Achtung, merrily on high. Welcome to our 12 Days of Christmas. We have Ways Pod specials. This is the last one we're doing, and we're doing it last, actually. It may surprise you that we actually are doing something in chronological order for a change. And Jim, what are we going to talk about?
Well, first of all, Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year. Yeah.
I hope you've had a good one. Yes. And as you can hear, I'm sounding a little bit back to my normal self.
You've recovered. Yeah.
Yeah, it's seasonal lurgy. It's kind of de rigueur, isn't it? And it is amazing how literally every chemist and pharmacy I've been into, you can't buy Lemsip for love nor money. So, but fortunately, my cousin's husband is a doctor, so he prescribed me some antibiotics and absolutely sorted me out in no time. But anyway, right. So I've obviously, I'm absolutely immersed knee deep in the Italy book at the moment.
Yeah,
and I've been looking at all these diaries, and I tell you what, well, let me say this first thing first, and then I'll go back to a very special diary. Yeah. So I've sort of set myself this task of trying to look at the campaign purely in the moment. Yeah. So I can make judgment calls on what is happening on any given day. And obviously I can't quite help retrospect coming into it. But what I'm trying to do is show the whole book as the events unfold, as they're seeing it on the ground at the time. So that's why I'm using almost entirely contemporary sources for this. Yeah. And it's really, really interesting. So a lot more diaries. And actually the diaries are just amazing because of course they're in the moment. And then suddenly you alerted me to this diary that was coming up for sale, RSM Ward of the 56th Heavy Regiment, which is of course the same regiment that Spike Milligan was attached to, up for sale. I immediately got onto Blackwell's rare books, took a deep breath, sucked through my teeth, bought it, then had a panic because of whole kind of Christmas post issues because it wasn't turning up. Then it did turn up. I've now scanned the whole thing, copied it, and I've started transcribing bits of it, and I've actually recruited Merrin Walters, who's a great friend of the show, diehard IC member, all the rest of it, and she's been brilliant. So she's also been transcribing, but she's also helping me with the identity of the author because it's listed as RSM Ward, but it doesn't mention his name at all.
Yes.
Now, he is clearly at regimental headquarters, but as you were pointing out, Spike refers to RSM Death, and how can anyone be called Death? And what do you put on his Death died and all the stuff on his gravestone and all that sort of
all
gag.
those jokes,
But then you mentioned about BSM.
Battery Sergeant Major Griffin, who is involved in who comes up in Spike's antics, because in the diary, the Ward diary, he says, I sang during the show, or during the party. He says, I sang during the party. And the thing is Spike has has the show on Christmas Day, but Battery Sergeant Major Griffin sings a couple of things, crops up a couple of times.
And he mentions it, doesn't he?
Reg Griffin, and he mentions it. Maybe their paths never actually did cross, but I find that
absolutely unbelievable. And you can tell that he likes a sing song, and he mentions this sort of stuff. I only sent you a bit of it, but the bit that I transcribed and the bit around Christmas. But there's obviously I've read through the whole thing, and there's sort of more about him. He clearly likes that sort of thing, and also his character that emerges in the diary doesn't correspond to the depiction of RSM Death.
No, not one bit. I mean,
because he seems like a nice bloke, doesn't he?
Yes, I mean he's a professional soldier, but he's not. He's judging by his diaries, he's not. There's that really fantastic, affecting bit where he says the PBI getting it.
He goes on about the PBI quite a lot. PBI comes up a lot, and he keeps And it's interesting, isn't it? All the stuff that we've been talking about Jonathan Fennell and his book and morale and all the rest of it. It's letters. They're obsessed with letters.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting in RSM. Well, let's call him, I don't know, whatever he is, the battery sergeant. Anyway, the diary. Let's call it the diary. He talks a lot about letters and the numbers. The letters are numbered. There's air letters and there's sea letters.
Yeah.
And obviously he gets a lot more air letters than he does sea letters.
Yeah.
And they're all numbered. Number 79. We've got two C letters today, 59 and 50. 60. And it's incredible. And he gets up and he goes into Naples and he buys stuff for his family. for his wife Elsa, and for his it sounds like son is Michael. What I'm getting.
Yeah.
There's lots of lovely phrases in it, aren't there? Sort of, what a do, what a show, what a carry on.
It's that sort of, it is that kind of understated thing, isn't it? That all of that. But I found it, what's really interesting, because he's writing it to his wife, isn't he? So he's telling her what's going on. He's being,
he's recording it for his wife, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. But it's all the stuff so it's full of all the stuff you're not supposed to put in your diary. So it does say where he is, what's going on, what's happening.
Unbelievable. Yeah. The whole shooting match.
Which is magnificent for the historian. But the trouble he'd be in if this diary were discovered. But I just, 11th of November. So his entry for the 11th of November. So on my armistice day, at the going down of the sun, we will remember them. If the man in the street had done so, I wouldn't have been writing this. And those poor bloody infantry wouldn't be chucking away their lives like they're doing at this minute on the high ground just by us here. It's a hard fight that's going on for these mountains. The guards are having a hell of a time. What with the cold and there is snow on top of some of the high ground and the job to get the supplies to them. It's the same for Jerry, of course. At present, we're taking very few prisoners. One that we did take said they'd been without food or water for 3 days. Again, this question of morale, he's totally alert to what's going on and what it's like for the people around him. You sent me the transcript of this. If you put PBI in, it just, like you say, it comes up again and again and again. He knows, in a strange way, he knows it's the infantry that are doing the really hard yards, that whatever they're going through as artillery is very difficult, but it's still nothing like being an infantryman. Nothing like being a sharp end.
So the 11th of November, that's the first Battle of Camino. So the Guards Brigade have been sent up this mountain. I can't begin to tell you how completely I'm totally moved by this in a way that it's only possibly been equaled by writing about the Sherwood Rangers. Not when I was doing Big Week with all those terrible losses. Even that didn't kind of hit home in the same way. This is just relentlessly grim. It's boiling hot when they land in Salerno in September. There's mosquitoes everywhere. There's shells going all over the place. The whole thing is just ground into a kind of sort of awful kind of drudge really quickly and incredibly dangerous for everyone involved. Whether you're out at sea on a landing craft flak, or whether you're in the infantry, or whether you're in the artillery, or flying a Spitfire, it's all absolutely horrific. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And there's this fantastic description of the 19th of October. He goes, I've been over the Volturno. I went out with a CRA chap on a recce for a new gun areas this morning. Had to be directed past 2 villages as the streets were blocked with rubble. Crossed the Volturno on a bridge made by the REs. Made a good job of it, like all their work. Often receiving information from the PBI. We went up a road, the end of which was held by Jerry. Left car by our house and walked up to the canal where our REs were yet again making a bridge over the canal. Jerry, by way, is blowing every bridge large and small, besides sowing hundreds of mines and traps. However, we walked up to the canal, after which we brought our vehicle up, it being fitted with wireless, and which we used to speak back to RHQ about 7 or 8 miles in the rear. Hadn't been there 5 minutes when down came the first Jerry shell, landed 20 to 30 yards away. We were by some PBI. The shelling made them swear as they said that we'd brought fire down on them by bringing our vehicle up. It was right to, anyway. He dropped them all around us, but nobody hurt, mostly 88mm guns. Nasty crash. We move forward tomorrow night, so before going out this morning, I packed your Christmas parcel, nice new stockings, etc. Hope they arrive okay and that the oranges will be okay. I picked them off the trees in the grounds and I packed them right away. We're advancing all along the line. There's a rumour floating around that we have made another landing between Rome and Naples, but nothing on the BBC about it. My cold has gone to my head. Feels like 2 heads. If I was at home, should be having a cup of hot milk in bed. The floor for me in my blanket. We've got blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
It's just... There's so much going on in that one little entry.
Yeah.
The thoughts of home, the kind of the PBI, the fact that he always calls Jerry, it's kind of... It's there's no hate there, is there? It's just... Jerry's in the same boat as us.
Yeah.
It's like a big match. It's like a big. It's a fight. It's a boxing match. It's kind of, it's not. And there's this sense that they're all in it, and there's also this endless amount of bombing and blowing up all the way. So, I've often talked about the Italian campaign being this sort of typhoon of steel. And you really get that sense of this. It's just this whirlwind just tearing down everything, and a bit later on they get to a town called Saronisa, which is just north of the Volturno, and the whole place is smashed to pieces and there's sort of dead Italians. And it says, the Germans just left them there dead, and so the Germans shot them, but it was probably actually caused by Allied artillery, wasn't it? It's so amazing to read this, knowing this was written on the day, and there's an entry where he goes, God, it's all going a bit slow at this rate. We might even be in Rome by Christmas. It's like, mate, you got to keep going till June.
Well, I mean, the next day, the 20th of October, on night duty, we were taking up positions over the river this afternoon. We came through Capua, which is just a mass of ruins. The REs have made a grand job of work at the Bailey Bridge there. Lost the side of a gun scammel through striking a ruin, but the driver got away okay, bit of luck. Even when there's a day where nothing's happening, something will go wrong. I mean, actually, it's interesting looking at Milligan on the 21st of October. He's still in Naples, I think, recovering from something. So
he has jaundice, doesn't he? Or sandpipe
that's right. Yeah, the diaries. Yeah, exactly. The diaries actually don't. Or they tell you that there might be stuff going on at the front, but men are out of the line and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Milligan's entry for November the 11th, although...
Well, the other thing that's interesting, sorry, about the 20th, is he goes, receive first papers tonight, dated end of July and August. And you remember, we were looking at the other day again, God, I never realised that they were sending out papers.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Yeah,
and there you are.
Exactly. But, I mean, I know Milligan's, it's a memoir, it's not a diary, but his...
There are diary entries in it, aren't there?
Yeah, Thursday, November the 11th, 1943, Armistice Day, ha, ha, ha. It's the
yeah, it's like a different approach.
But he writes, "Oh, what a lovely war! Not so lovely when we hear by the grapevine that our PBI is suffering 50% casualties. Thank God I'm not in the infantry. So ended Armistice Day. What a day to die." So quite clearly, what's happening is everyone knows how bad it is. I suppose, and of course, if you're in the artillery, you're doing shoots, and you know where people are, and you know if positions are holding, and all that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, these diaries are absolutely, they're fantastic, aren't they?
Total gold, and the Christmas one is great.
Yeah,
so 24th of December, he goes, well, you can read the 27th, but I'll read 24th.
Yeah.
He goes, so this is Christmas Eve. What a turnout. I've been back to the other side of the Volturno this morning to take part in a march past for the Corps Commander. About 180 from our regiment, also about the same number from other artillery regiments. Quite a good show. Patrol work only in our part of the line. Wonder what it'll be like tomorrow. It's stopped raining for a few hours.
Yeah.
The 27th is just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all is. Milligan goes on that parade. Basically, it's 2 hours off. It's 2 hours off in the town. Now then, commenced BSM Griffin. There's 2 hours to see around the town. The lorries will be back here to pick us up. Looked at his wrist, he'd forgotten his watch. At 1500 hours, any Laytons will have to walk back. Right, dear Smiths. And so they go into the...
I think you're right. I think it's got to be BSM Griffin.
I think it might be, mightn't it?
I really think it is. Anyway,
but yes, so 27th December had quite a good Christmas. Officers brought round the gunfire on Christmas morning, doped with rum. I got the Xmas feeling by opening my Xmas parcel. Also, Airgraph Xmas cards, very pleased with my presents. Received all things that I was short of.
It's so sweet, isn't it?
It's just gorgeous. Our guns had done a lot of shooting Christmas Eve, but a bit of a lull on at present, expecting a big show any minute. Had a sing-song Christmas night. I'd done a turn on the new party, which we're having on the 31st of the month. Said my piece as per Frank Bellinus. Rang a small whist drive for the lads last night, went down very well. Back to normal today. Has turned very cold, in fact, icy. Had letter today to say that both Fred and Dick are both home. Lucky boys. I just sort of think, I think he might be Griffin.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're right. It's got to be. It's all just because Griffin's in charge, isn't he?
Well, our filed diary, Sergeant Major Griffin and sergeants wake us with tea and rum and we're off. That must be who he is. My diary, late Ravalli, don't have to get up. BSM and sergeants bring us tea and rum in bed.
Yeah. Because the officers have gone round and then they've gone round.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then I've also been looking at this diary from the So when the invasion happened, they kept a diary. There weren't that many monks up at the Monte Cassino Abbey.
Yeah.
And they kept a diary, and the guy who kicks it off is a chap called Dom Eusebio Grosseto.
Yeah,
And it's just so interesting. I was thinking, am I going to write about monks? Really? I was kind of quite down on it. And then I read through the whole thing. It's just amazing because you see this, these Benedictine monks, their whole kind of thesis is about peace and love and and thinking about life and just being tranquillo and kind of, not bothering anybody, praising God and just doing their own thing. And there is this mounting panic from the Father Abbot all the way down to, and it's very sort of egalitarian. Father Abbot is the guy in charge, but they're all kind of in it together, And they just don't know what to do. And the Germans turn up and they say, I really think it'd be a good idea if you hand over all your art. And they're kind of thinking, okay.
Oh, for God's sake.
There's this guy called Schlegel. He's also kept an account, Julius Schlegel. And they're eventually persuaded to do so, but do so with a huge amount of misgivings. Are they doing the right thing? But they're saying, this is going to be the front line. I'm really sorry about it, but we're building a defensive line. It's coming straight through here. We want to look after this for you. They're then really disgusted at the way that the Germans make massive propaganda out of it.
Really?
By then going, look what we've done. We're saving art for humanity and all this sort of stuff.
I mean, fool me once. I mean, you know what I mean?
I know, but they're all monks. They're not worldly wise. They're totally naive. They're totally naive, and they don't know what to do. And then they eventually by sort of into November, they agree that there's going to be a 300-meter exclusion zone around the monastery. Which the Germans then don't kind of really observe. So they're constantly having to complain about it and say, look, honestly, I can see you digging caves under here, and they sort of go, yeah, okay, well, get on. Then sort of, a new commander comes in and the Father Abbot berates him and he says, okay, leave it with me, and so on. And then they start taking in kind of civilians who are sheltering from the town because they can see the Germans from sort of, late October, November onwards, blowing up part of Casino. So it's in blowing up all the rail tracks. It's in blowing up buildings. Every day there's kind of new explosions going on. And they're just completely bewildered by this and sort of distraught and don't know what to do. Civilians are coming up looking for kind of, shelter, succor, all that kind of stuff. Then the Germans come along and say they can't be there. And so there's these heartbreaking scenes of people being sort of ripped away, the men being ripped away from their family for slave labor and stuff. It's so traumatic, I can't tell you. Then eventually, at the beginning of January, the Germans go, do you know what, that whole 300-meter thing, we're actually not, we're not going to do that. God. So that, they are absolutely in the foundations of the monastery. They might not be in the monastery, and they've got an observation post, and they take away the cable car, and they kind of, they start, and they're blowing stuff up all around things for fields of fire. And anyway, people are starting to get ill. And the awful thing about Father Dom Eusebio is by the middle of January, he's starting to get really ill. Then by the end of January, he's really ill. He's got a temperature of 140. And at this point, Dom Martino takes over and goes, I'm taking over the diary because Dom Eusebio is really ill. Anyway, 13th of February, Dom Eusebio dies.
No.
33.
God.
What? It's 2 days before the destruction of the monastery. So his body is still in out cold on a slab.
Oh, Jesus.
When the bombers come over and they don't know what to do about it.
God, what is he
absolutely.
Is it cholera or something?
No. So they think it's influenza. They're all getting flu up there. And because all the, some of these little 13-year-old girls are dying and a 12-year-old boy dies and then another woman dies, and they're all, it's just all going like running, it's like hot fire. But they think he's got typhoid.
Right.
I think that's the problem. It's absolutely horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. It's so dramatic. I can't tell you. And then there's his Dom Eusebio's Christmas entries, which are just, they're really affecting. I mean, incredibly moving. And von Senger comes to mass on Christmas Day.
God.
No, on Christmas Eve. At 2:00, the evening services began in the crypt, which was full of the faithful. We recited the divine office, singing the hymn, the readings for the 3 nighttime services and the Te Deum. Father Abbot celebrated a spoken mass, and many partook of the sacraments. At the very end of the service, General von Senger arrived with commander of the 14th Armoured Corps and a practicing Catholic. He wished to take part in our services and promised to return tomorrow morning. Saturday, the 25th of December. Christmas at war. Father Abbot celebrated the conventual Mass in the crypt, preceded by the hymns of the Terce. Then we sang some parts of the Mass. General von Sanger returned. We had prepared a reserved place for him in the crypt, but he had to leave at the end of the homily as he had to attend a function at the general headquarters in Roccasecca. He took the sacrament, however, and we offered him refreshments. He talked to me about the Battle of the Garigliano. I took advantage of the situation to relate the contents of Father Abbott's letter to General Fries to him. I expressed our confidence that the protection zone would be respected. He did not reply.
Oh, God.
And within 6 weeks, he's dead.
God.
Father Eusebio. And he's 33-year-old monk, monk and priest. It's just awful.
Like you said, you do join this to escape the world, don't you? And its consequences, and to contemplate sin and the meaning of eternal life and all that. That's why you become a monk, isn't it? To eschew the world of the flesh and its pitfalls and all that. And here you are caught in the middle. The idea that oh, it's all right, the generals are practicing Catholic. Fine, great, we've got something in common. I mean, it's pretty thin gruel, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very thin gruel. And the whole point of having the monastery on the top of a mountain was so that it's safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was in kind of 13 something. And, this is now 1943. And it's just, there's this, you get in the diary, you get this terrific sense of the kind of sort of the building horror of this sort of growing threat to everything that they know, that they're rocking the foundations of absolutely everything, literally and metaphorically. It's incredibly moving. And the updates on Father Eusebio's health from Father Martino are really, they're really moving. It's just, you can't help but feel upset. I mean, it's just, it's very, because it's in the moment, it feels like it's now. That's the point, I think. And you're getting this sort of real bewilderment of the monks and everything about what is happening to them and what to do and how should they respond. The Germans come and say, we want some animals. Can we buy some animals off you? And they say, well, we kind of need them ourselves. That's the whole point. But so what do? Do you kind of sort of, well, we gave them 11 sheep, I hope that will see them off, but of course it won't.
Of course not. I mean, there's something heartbreaking about this naivety of it, isn't there? That if you're the Germans, you say, oh yeah, don't worry, there'll be an exclusion zone. Don't worry about that. Yeah, that'll be, and then obviously someone's gone, well, we're going to have to dig defences there. Of course we are. Don't worry, they're just monks, and they're sort of mugging them off, aren't they? I mean, it's horrible.
And they're doing a lot of stick and carrot because they say, what we really would like is we'd like a little bit of protection up here. So can you, could we have a couple of guards? Yeah, no problem at all. So they send up 3 guards who are their kind of guards for the guards, but gosh.
God. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to come back with, we've got more diaries, haven't we, Jim? Okay. We'll see you in a tick. Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, our 12th day of Christmas, and James is having an epiphany via the means of diaries. See what I did there?
A diary epiphany.
The Georg Zelner diary.
Georg Zelner, flipping heck. So I wrote about him in Italy's Sorrow. So he was absolutely top of my list of characters that I was going to bring back. But I'd never read the first part of his diary. So when I was out in Freiburg, that was the bit I got, was the bit that I didn't have. And it's just amazing. So he is a battalion commander. He is a major. He's a battalion commander. Got the 3rd Battalion in the 44th Hocken Deutschmeister Division, which has been rebuilt after Stalingrad in Holland and Belgium, and then after they are in Antwerp, based in Antwerp, when Mussolini is overthrown on the 26th of July, 1943, middle of a Sicilian campaign, and they are immediately sent to take the Brenner Pass and secure it. So they do, and that's where they are when the Allies invade in September. They're up there still doing all that kind of stuff, and they are involved in taking down the Italian army, rounding them all up and all the rest of it. And they have quite a lot of fighting with the Alpini division, for example, one of the Alpini divisions. And they then go into the Balkans and they're on anti-partisan operations. It's all pretty brutal stuff.
Yeah.
And then eventually, they're sent down to the Southern Front in, whatever it is, October, November sometime. And almost immediately they're flung straight into the front line. And they are just north of Cassino. So the Gustav line runs across, the winter line is the bit that goes through is south of Cassino, goes through this is the Mignano Cap. This is San Pietro that we've talked about. It's Monte Sammucro, Monte Camino that we were just talking about with BSM Griffin's diary, if it is indeed him, and so on. But then just north of Cassino, it cuts across the upper Rapido Valley and then becomes the Gustav line again, all the way across to, the Adriatic coast.
Yeah.
And so where he's thrown in is just to the north bit, which is where, at the time, the 34th Red Bulls are attacking at the beginning of December 1943.
Yeah.
And later on, they're pulled out and they go directly into the Cassino position, attached temporarily to the 29th Panzer Grenadier Division. And they're then coming up against the French. This is when the FEC first come in on mainland Italy.
Yeah,
and it is absolutely brutal. I mean, if you think it's brutal for the Allied PBI, it is really brutal for the German PBI. And what you get a sense from him is this. He's a good Catholic. He's a family man. He's got his lovely little moppets in Regensburg and his wife and his mum, and he worries about them all the time. And he is desperately trying to work out how to make sense of this total insanity that he finds himself.
The journey to Rome entry on the 24th of November. At 3:00, we continue our journey. It was raining at 8:00. I wake up and we're in a wonderful area, Tawny. Sunshine and beautiful people cheer us up. How beautiful it must be here in peace. Even though the people are poor and the outward splendour is deceptive, one feels good in these surroundings. How warm must this all-destroying war be? Will anything change afterwards? Will the kingdom of heaven come to everyone? No. It will remain as it always has been, and only work and skill will create prosperity, no matter what nation the individual belongs to. In this way, people beat each other to death over ideas that survive on the basis of the act of beating each other to death. And after the war, no one will know why they waged war. All the misfortune will accuse the present generation. The widows and orphans will curse those responsible. But life will go on. The next generation will have forgotten everything. New butts will arise. Poets will sing of the heroic deeds of the present war. Another myth will emerge.
It's just... And he's spot on, isn't he?
Well, but that's also people beat each other to death over ideas that survive on the basis of the act to beat each other to death. That's a Nazi touchstone, isn't it?
It is.
The toughest survive, and you smash the other side to death for your ideals.
But it's a bit more subtle than the Nazi line.
But I think it's filtering through that mindset, isn't it? Is war the crown of our culture? It goes on to ask that.
Yes, but because that is what he's been told it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So go back to the 9th of September, the day of the Salerno invasion. We were joyful allies of the Italians. Badoglio let it be known that the war was over for Italy and that resistance would be offered against Germany if the people did not agree. But Germany must live. So we will carry out the interment with good confidence in our luck in the battle and with confidence in my battalion, i.e. the sort of rounding up of the Italian troops. We are all convinced of the necessity. This brings me back to the immediate battle. It's a tragedy. My people are in good spirits despite everything, and I hope that no great casualties are a result. So I go back to my command post. Of course, my thoughts are also with my loved ones, my wife and my children, but they will understand if a sacrifice has to be made that it was only for them and for Germany, and it is worth it. But he's changed his tune by December. I think it's safe to say. Yeah. And this is it just gets worse and worse and worse. It is just extraordinary how bad it gets for him. he's furious because his battalion is being used in companies in penny packets.
Yeah.
And he knows this is not the way to use it, and they're getting 50% casualties, and they're in a kind of he's taking the pick and shovel himself. They're building this little bunker. They're on this mountain. It's freezing cold. It's raining. The amount of Allied shells that are coming down is just absolutely relentless. On the 12th of the 12th, Daisy's birthday, Rachel's birthday.
Yeah.
It goes, the day like before, no joy, only suffering. It is almost boring to write about it. 14th of the 12th, like yesterday, it's sickening. Is there any point to this anymore? Curses and curses again. 15th, it goes, rations arrive with mules, wounded are still being cared for, and then we doze and sleep as best we can. With a curse on the war, I fall asleep. Goes, and then the following day is 16th. So the Gebirgsjäger battalion, which is the 100th Gebirgsjäger battalion, 11th company wiped out. Remainder 1 officer, 9 men.
Bloody hell!
Okay, and this is the 16th of December. So this is at a time when they're not even. This isn't even the first Battle of Cassino.
Yes,
this is an outlier.
This is the day to day. Yeah,
this is a day. It goes, regiment sends in all kinds of reserves, Cossacks, bicycle squadron, engineer platoon. We managed to seal off the area, but it's a crisis. And then on the 17th of the 12th, damn the situation. It's unbelievable. And then again, it gets worse. It eventually gets to Valle Rotonda, where a horrible massacre happens in January or February or whatever. And then he goes, 24th, so this is Christmas Eve.
Yeah. These are so bleak, these entries.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Our terrain is completely hostile. No one can get out of the holes by day. Movement is only possible at night, so we live like rats. Fires cannot be made either, as the smoke would give us away. So we spend the day brooding silently. In the evening, the food carriers bring Christmas mail and Christmas presents. We also have a Christmas tree. But we can't move because the enemy is shooting like crazy around the hole today. There is no mood at all as everyone listens intently to the howling of the shells. At 24 o'clock, the mail arrives. We drink red wine. By Hindenburg light, we sing the Christmas carol. Then we lie down. The first Christmas in the field is over. 1,000 thoughts of home move me. And then it's Christmas Day.
I know. That's the thing. It just gets worse.
The mutual shooting intensifies around noon, and the day has nothing Christmassy about it at all. We curse about the war, but it is all of no use. It goes on in the old madness of the people. In the evening, we fry out of boredom and for distraction. Write to my wife and the in-laws. Sometimes we're in such an irritable mood that everyone wants to run into everybody else. I don't get any mail today either. Even the wine doesn't help overcome the bad mood. And from the corner, Feldwebel Krauser sounds a curse every time he hits the ground. We only laugh at the mail. I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
He's in bad health, flatulence, heart and lung problems.
Yeah.
Dead are immediately taken away on mules. Then he finally gets taken out to... I mean, the last day of the year is just unbelievable. I don't know if you want to read this one, but it's
it's midnight. The last day of the year has dawned. But now the Americans shoots a little less. So things seem to be calming down. It calms down a bit. Only we're all aware that a direct hit is the end of this world. The impacts are right in front of us. The last one is 2 meters away. Sometimes you go completely deaf. One becomes comical. Singing and cursing change. Today I treated everything that came under my fingers badly. I insulted them for behaving wrongly. But when I think about it, it doesn't matter what you do. He's absolutely despondent, isn't he?
Yeah. And what's interesting is BSM Griffin, our other diary on 56, constantly talking about planes, constantly talking about air power. Jerry Plane came over today. We all had a bit of fun with him shooting with our Brens. He crashed or he didn't. He got away this time or whatever. Or, Jerry's over Naples and looked out from our hill. We could see, amazing ACAC flying up and all this sort of stuff. This one, he also talks about, Zelner also talks about it. And he goes, we haven't seen one of our planes yet. And we're deployed in the focal point of Cassino. Enemy planes are a dime a dozen, and I don't think ours can do anything. We're now down to 2 guns in our section. My squadron has only 50% combat strength. Yeah. All right. But now I lie down and take off my boots because a grenade doesn't care if it hits me with or without boots. A grenade is that should be shell, of course. What's called them.
Yes,
not much left. Yes. Go on, read that bit.
Well, yes, the war really is beautiful.
Yeah.
If only all the poets could be punched in the mouth, it would be a delight. To die, suffer, endure, and perish. The year ends as it was, sad, serious, no mail from home, all connections. It's fascinating. He's absolutely despondent in this. Cats.
It's the last bit, though, isn't it? And then just when you think it can't get any worse.
Yeah. 3 soldiers raped a 15-year-old girl in Chivaro. Man becomes an animal. The girl stood stark naked as we snatched the prey from the 3. And wild desperation was in the young thing's eyes. The 3 were scratched and bitten, but that only increased the 3's frenzy. Now they will probably be shot. What is a human life, after all?
That's the last entry. It's so horrendous. It's so awful.
But this is really good, Jim, because we've been talking for several months now about you're not part of the crusade for the Second Front that comes with D-Day the following year. You're not part of any of that. You're not part of the supposedly chivalrous desert war, the Gerbera stakes or whatever. You're not part of that anymore. It's somewhere else altogether, isn't it? And you can see why lots of people are saying it's like the First World War. It's reminding them of the First World War.
I think it's actually worse than the First World War because I think they're in the line longer.
Yeah. And
your chance of getting out are just as bad,
Well,
if not
and the
worse.
civilian populations are caught up in it because the line isn't actually static. So it moves on and destroys a new place.
Well, and you get our diary from the 56th Heavy. Went through Capua, it's total mess, utterly destroyed.
Yeah.
Arrive in Saronese, whole place is completely wrecked, dead Italians everywhere. Had to do a detour because the village was blocked with rubble.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be a complete mixture between German demolitions and Allied artillery, but put that together, that's quite a potent mix of destruction, and it's just unbelievable. And going through all those towns, I mean, Capua is quite well healed these days. It's kind of rebuilt quite nicely, but most of these towns are absolute shitholes, because they've all been rebuilt in the 50s and 60s, and they just look awful. I mean, it's just, and then the final diary we've got is, so Bud Wagner's quite interesting. I picked this one out because it is quite a sort of full diary. And at this time, you see, he's an artillery agent, battalion agent. So what he does is he beetles around liaising between the batteries. So he's actually doing a pretty similar job to BSM Griffin, if it indeed is him.
Yeah.
But he's a bit he's lower down the scale. But his job is to beetle around in his Jeep, or his Peep, as he calls it. And he does find himself in the firing line quite a lot because he's got to travel, and there's lots of mines, and he's only got to go across a line which is exposed to enemy shelling and mortars and all the rest of it. So he has some quite hairy escapes. But the difference between him and Zelner is that he's been in exactly that same battle that Zelner's been fighting up in the mountains, because he's 34th Red Bulls, and he's now out of the line. And when he's out of the line, he has a really nice time. He gets lots of chow. He goes to cinemas. And
I mean, it's mainly about food, this diary, isn't it? Up at 6:30, chow at 7:30. Rosie's here cooking. He let me
got
use
a shave,
watch.
took a shower.
The 23rd, yeah. Got a shave this morning, took a shower, spent the rest of the forenoon looking over this part of town, close to the rest of the... I mean, he seems quite well behaved, or he's not telling us everything he's getting up to. But
he's just a straight down the line father and son.
Yeah, Christmas Day, good supper, turkey. Went to the show, Rhythm of the Islands. It's sort of he's having sort of clean cut, straightforward time, isn't it? It's fascinating.
Well, he's having some release. That's the thing. He's having some very, very hairy times. There's absolutely no question about it. He has some awful experiences, but in between, he's given, they are given sort of Pepsis and decent chow and all this kind of stuff. It's got his photograph, folded blankets, went to church. That's because he is out of the line, and it is a better experience for him than perhaps the British, and the British is substantially better experience than it is for the Germans.
If you looked at an infantryman's diary, he might be less well reliably fed. But the thing you do get from the Milligan diaries is that they don't ever go hungry, really. They have some days where the food's rotten and they don't like the food, but there's never this thing of we live like rats, we dare not light fires. There seems to be very little of that. It is interesting though, Jim, because you're pushing into this this Italian war as it's a war without cause, isn't it? It is,
and it really feels like it, and it's so. I'm trying to work out how to sort of, I've started writing and everything, but I'm trying to work out how to do it in a way that it all kind of some sense is made of it. And then I suddenly thought, don't try, because there is no sense to this. You just need to have these different stories and just see them all converge. And sometimes they cross over and sometimes they don't. And you can see there's a guy who's sort of, number two in a wing, that's suddenly been told that what they've got to do is they've actually got to land in Salerno, because they can't just keep doing these kind of, huge 3-hour trips from Sicily. They need to, huge mileage with their drop tanks. They need to give continual cover. It's this crisis moment. So they've prepared this landing strip literally just off the beach, and they're just going to have to go in and do it. And one guy comes in and he gets fired at by all the Allies. So he then turns around and says, is there any chance you could shut that down, please, for a minute? I've got to try and come in and land. And they go, yeah, no problem at all. We'll stop everyone. Comes in, everyone shoots at him again. He crashes and dies. Seriously. So he's dead. He's like a wing commander. So, or squadron leader. He's squadron leader of 93 Squadron, a chap called Ken MacDonald. And then Sheep Gilroy, who's the wing commander, and his deputy, Cocky Dundas, then have to come in after him.
Yeah.
And they do. And while they're firing, there's this huge barrage going on, and basically the 25-pounders are basically firing over them while they're coming into land.
Oh, my God.
So Cocky Dundas goes, this is ridiculous. We can't go on with this. So he then manages to get a Jeep, having just touched down in Salerno, goes down to see the local Royal Artillery, 25-pounder regiment, and goes, look, I'm sorry, can you just stop firing when we're coming in? And the guy goes, that's absolutely ridiculous. You can't possibly be serious and think that a 25-pounder is going to shoot down a Spitfire. That's just never going to happen. No, we've been told to keep firing. That's what we're going to do. So they just go, okay, and crack on.
God.
But then there's another guy who's been in 111 Squadron, and 93 Squadron is so cut up and so lost has lost so many people, and morale is so bad that they have to have a change of CO because McDonald's been killed, and a change of people, and some experienced guys come in. So my Canadian guy, Hap Kennedy, then comes in as a flight commander on 93 Squadron. So there's these kind of constant links and little stories all fit together. But I think trying to make too much sense of it is probably it's just not the way to go. I think I've just got to have my characters and just follow them and just see what happens. And then this crossing of lives with civilians. I mean, it's just... But it's interesting. If you look at Bud Wagner's last entry for the December 31st, which I didn't send you, but I've got it here.
Yeah,
goes, went to the DAO again. Cold and windy most of the day. Jack, Joe, Reb, Barney and I had a party with the canned chicken Grandma sent. We made sandwiches with it and had coffee. The 151 moved up tonight. McGee got lost, raining a lot, miserable. 1 year ago today, we were on HMS Empress of Australia, landed in Africa on the 3rd of January, got into action February the 15th, left the kitchen in April, got the battalion agent job then, travelled back to Iran, then to Bizerta, and made the Italian invasion with the 36th Division September the 9th. In action almost continually since then. Our 101st Battalion has had 27 killed and 200 casualties to this date.
God.
That's his last entry of the war. I mean, entry of the year. Yeah.
Well.
That's his field battalion. That's his artillery battalion, not his infantry battalion.
Yeah.
So even that's a lot.
Yeah. No, that's hard going, isn't it?
Yeah. So sorry, I said he was 34th. He's 36th Division, Texas Division. So it's just amazing.
This is really. I mean, this is. I think you in a way because you're not finishing in the book. The war isn't going to end. So that sense of it being war without end. Spike Milligan's father said to him, "It'll only go on for forever."
Yeah, and still going on to this day as we continue to chat and chew the cud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, anyway, we hope you've enjoyed this Diaries edition.
Christmas Diaries edition.
Christmas Diaries edition. They're
a few rabbit holes.
Fantastic to read, though,
aren't they? It's something very exciting about that immediacy of it. This is not kind of told with retrospect. This is in the moment. And even when there's been memoirs, I've tried to get memoirs where they're absolutely based on diaries, or they're written very close after the event.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to find out who this Sergeant Major Ward.
Well, I think you're right. BSM Griffin. I think that's the one.
Could be. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this last of our 12 days of Christmas. A peaceful and prosperous 2023 to all of you from everyone here at We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.